Hey guys, it's just Patrick here coming for another quick video from Complete Health. Just again, I wanted to give you guys a couple of extra tips on some stuff that I've basically noticed has changed during this uncertain time. So this is something that I've noticed a lot of people are probably doing a lot more at the moment, and this is an increased level of sitting. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to go through the 3 biggest dysfunctions that I see from people sitting too much. Okay, so sitting too much. Obviously, our body was never really designed to sit for long periods of time. So the first thing we need to obviously be aware of, if you are going to sit, try and set up your sitting position to be the most ergonomical you possibly can. However, despite the fact that you can make your desk position or any of the positions with your desk as good as possible, there are still going to be some very, very common dysfunctions that you really are not going to be able to avoid. So these are the 3 biggest ones that I tend to see as a chiropractor and some of the dysfunctions that they start to cause. So number 1, because we're sitting for long periods of time, typically with our shoulders forward, reaching for a keypad or a keyboard, or with our phone, or even we're just sat on the sofa and we're lounging. If we're sitting for long periods of time with the shoulders rolled in, what tends to happen is we start to see a shortening in our pectoral muscles or our chest muscles. And as a result, what we can start to do is shorten the distance from the humeral head to the clavicle, otherwise known as the collarbone. If we shorten this distance, what we start to do is we actually start to create a shortening in the muscle, and as a result, we actually have a lot of tendons, blood vessels, and nerves that escape underneath the collarbone. Now, if that collarbone and the humeral head become too close together over a long period of time, what we can start to see is fraying and wearing of the ligaments surrounding the shoulder, and also potentially we can start to see stuff like thoracic outlet, which is a restriction in the blood vessels going into the arms, but we can also start to see changes in the neurons, so we can start to get referred pain from the arms. So probably the first most common thing that I start to see from sitting too much is a shortening in the pecs, and it starts to create this shoulder issue, whether that's actually directly from the shoulder itself or referred from the nerves or the blood vessels coming down underneath the collarbone. Dysfunction number 2. Now this is again really common. Again, and it's mainly to do with the top. It's this position of the head sitting forward, lounging forward, and like I say, if we can get our ergonomic position better, we're going to reduce this problem. However, whilst we're sitting most of the time with our occiput in a slightly extended position. So what starts to happen is the muscles in the posterior part of the neck start to tighten up as well. So really simply, what we'll start to see is when the neck muscles start to tighten up, the head starts to jut forward. As the head starts to jut forward, what we start to see is a change in the position of the head. As the head starts to position forward, ergonomically and physically, as far as a vector point of view is concerned, the head starts to weigh more the further it's actually shot out in front of the shoulder. So what we start to see here, massive increases in the tension in the muscles in the posterior part of the neck. And as a result, any problems with the muscles and the joints around the neck can start to create neck pain and especially headaches. What we know is those nerve roots that are sitting in the neck or in the spinal cord in the neck actually can start to shoot up into the head, and that can actually start to create that feeling or fuzzy feeling in your head. You'll probably notice if you sit for very long periods of time, you kind of get that fog in the front of the head, and a lot of the time that's actually referring up from the neck. So that's dysfunction number 2. The third dysfunction is actually not around the top, it's around the bottom. Now, where our hips are sat at a 90-degree angle to our torso, what we actually start to do is we're bringing our knees up towards our chest. So what starts to happen here is we start to see a shortening in the hip flexors, those big muscles that insert into the lower back and then go into the hips. Now, with a change of motion or movement or a tightness in the hip flexors, what we start to see is a change in the positioning of our pelvis. If we change the position of our pelvis, essentially this is like letting the corners of your house start to sink. If the corners of your house start to sink, what we start to see is the foundations start to change. And as the foundations start to change, what we start to see is cracks starting to appear up in the wall, as all of the positions of everything above it are starting to try and compensate and turn in order to actually actually hold our position together. So those hip flexors, those big muscles in the lower back, are really designed to help us move through our hips and actually stabilize our lower back. It also actually allows us to help move our hips and actually control the pressure in our hips. So with the hip flexors becoming very tight, some of the most common things you'll start to see: lower back pain, and potentially even hip girdle pain, or restrictions in your movement, or a difficulty in bending or flexing. So for me, these are my 3 biggest dysfunctions. I'm just going to shoot back over them one more time. Tight pecs, very, very common. Tight rear cervical muscles and tight hip flexors, all of which can result in either problems with your neck, your shoulders, your hips, your lower back, headaches. There's so many dysfunctions that we can start to see with sitting. Now, there's a really, really easy way you can fix this if you start to actually get up and move around. So by actually moving and stretching these muscles, we can actually start to lengthen the positions of these muscles. And as a result, we can start to see a reversal in these processes. If we can reverse these processes consistently, versus what we are actually doing as far as we're sitting. If we're sitting versus the stretching, and we can find an equal balance, generally as a rule of thumb, we can actually avoid the issues. I hope you guys found these tips helpful. If you need any advice on the actual exercises that you can use to actually stretch out these areas, you can find these on our YouTube channel. Equally, you can just shoot us a message or give us a call or leave a comment below, and we will link you into the exercises to help you solve your sitting problems. That's all for me today. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care. Bye.